Okay, so ready for a deep dive? We're really getting into it today with The Great Learning.
The foundation of Confucianism, right?
It really is. It's considered to be from around the 5th century BC and one of the 4 books at the heart of Confucianism. It's a whole framework for how we can transform, both personally and as a society.
And everyone knows, I love a good framework. Give me a blueprint for, well, a better everything. So, for those of us who weren't exactly raised on Confucius, what's the main idea? What's the takeaway here?
Imagine this. Confucius saying that if you want to change the world, you got to start with yourself. The text talks about cultivating illustrious virtue, which is basically this deep inner goodness that then spreads outward. Okay, starting with myself feels a lot less overwhelming than fixing like all the world's problems, right?
Yeah.
So how do we actually do that? How do we cultivate illustrious virtue? Is it like meditation or something?
It's bigger than that. The text talks about knowing where to rest, and I know that sounds kind of like chill, but it actually means having a super clear understanding of your purpose, your place in the grand scheme of things. Confucius really thought that when you align yourself with the Tao, that's like the natural order of the universe, you get this inner peace and then you act the right way.
Okay, less about margaritas on the beach and more like finding your own North Star, but for life, right?
Exactly. It's like from that place of knowing your purpose, then you can act with intention and clarity. It's so interesting how this ancient idea lines up with things we talk about now, like mindfulness and goal setting.
It's like Confucius was, like the OG life coach, right?
Yeah.
So we've got our internal compass pointed the right way. What's next?
So The Great Learning uses this really powerful metaphor to explain what's next. Roots and branches. Think about it. Strong, healthy branches, they come from a deep, healthy root system, right?
Makes sense. You can't have one without the other.
Right. And the text is saying that working on our inner world, on cultivating ourselves, that's the root. And then everything else, relationships, communities, even a well-run society, those are the branches. They only really thrive when that root is taken care of.
So it's not even about focusing on the problems we see on the surface. It's about going deeper. It makes you wonder, how often do we try to fix the branches when it's really the root that needs attention?
Right. All the time. And The Great Learning reminds us that this self-cultivation, it's called zushin in Chinese. And it's not a one-time thing. It starts with investigating things, which is essentially about seeking knowledge and trying to understand the world.
Oh, okay. So we're not talking about zoning out and meditating. We're talking about actively engaging with the world around us, learning and growing. But it sounds like it goes deeper than just like knowing a bunch of facts, right? It's about using that knowledge to become better versions of ourselves.
Exactly. You've got it. And that's where sincerity comes in. The text emphasizes that it's not enough to just know the right thing to do, but we have to really want to do it. And then, of course, our actions have to reflect that.
No more of that do as I say, not as I do stuff. Huh?
Yeah. Right. It's about walking the walk, not just talking about it. And that means constantly working on ourselves, being honest about our thoughts, and making sure our actions match up with our values.
It's like holding up a mirror, being real about what we see, and asking, how can I be better?
Exactly. The Great Learning calls this rectifying the heart. Might sound kind of intense, but it's about wanting to be better and then acting with integrity.
And that sounds like, well, a lifelong project, don't you think?
For sure. It's not about reaching some perfect state. It's about always trying to grow and improve.
Okay, so we're like investigating things, working on our hearts, really trying to embody this whole self-cultivation thing. But does it actually, make a difference out there in the real world?
That's what's so cool about The Great Learning. It doesn't just stop at like personal growth. It shows how this inner work can actually have this huge ripple effect outward.
Okay, I like where this is going. Tell me more about this ripple effect.
Think about it this way. When you're working on yourself, you become a better family member, friend, a better part of society.
I mean, that's the goal.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing Confucius took this idea even further.
Oh yeah, for sure. He talked about how a well-ordered family can then influence the whole state and then like the entire kingdom even. He uses this analogy about a ruler's influence, saying it's as powerful as a single sentence. It can inspire greatness or it can lead to, total destruction.
Wow, that's a lot of responsibility. It makes you think about the weight of every word, every action, even if you're not like running a country, but just leading a team at work or something.
Exactly. The Great Learning really gets into this idea of leading by example. It stresses that anyone in charge, rulers, sure, but really anyone with authority, has to actually live by the same virtues they expect from others.
So no more of that do as I say, not as I do stuff, huh? Especially when you're in a position of power.
Nope, not according to Confucius. The text actually gives examples of what happened to rulers who cared more about, their own personal gain than actually being righteous, and let's just say it didn't end well for them or the people they were supposed to be leading.
Yeah, talk about a timeless lesson. It's all about accountability, integrity, and not just for like politicians and stuff, but for all of us, right?
Absolutely. And speaking of things that are still relevant today, The Great Learning actually has some pretty interesting things to say about wealth and prosperity, too.
Okay, now this I have to hear. Did Confucius think we should all be, like, giving up our possessions and living like monks or something? What do you have to say about money?
Well, he wasn't saying everyone should be poor or anything, but the text really stresses that true prosperity comes from, righteousness. It's about the well-being of all the people.
So not just about getting rich for the sake of it.
Exactly. It's about a society where everyone has a chance to actually thrive. There's this quote from an official named Meng Xian, and it stuck with me. He compares ignoring the needs of people just so you can have more money for yourself to actually hiring someone to rob you.
Ouch. That's a powerful image, right? We've all felt that feeling of getting cheated, even if it's like by ourselves,
Yeah.
So is that what Confucius was getting at? That real prosperity can't exist if a big chunk of society is struggling?
Yeah, you got it. And that idea is just as true now as it was way back then. Look at the conversations happening today, right? About income inequality, social justice, even climate change. It all goes back to this idea that we're all connected and we share responsibility for each other. We can't just be focused on what we can get for ourselves. We have to think about the well-being of everyone.
So it's bigger than just being a good person. It's about creating systems where everyone has the chance to do good and to thrive. It's almost like kind of a political statement, but from like an ancient philosophy text,
Right. That's what makes The Great Learning so fascinating. It goes beyond just us as individuals and talks about the kind of world we're building together.
It's a blueprint, but for a more just and caring society. And it all starts with each of us, which, let's be real, feels pretty important these days, right?
100%. It reminds us that even small actions, when they come from that place of self-cultivation, when we're committed to something bigger than ourselves, those actions can make a difference. They can have a ripple effect.
It's like they say, right? A rising tide lifts all boats. But in this case, it's more like a well-lived life lifts all people.
Totally. And that takes us right back to the heart of The Great Learning, saying that when we change ourselves, we change society. Those things are totally connected.
So it's more than just a self-help thing. It's like a guidebook for a better world. But how do we actually make this happen? It all sounds amazing in theory, but life gets kind of crazy, and it's easy to lose track of the big picture,
And that's where that step-by-step self-cultivation thing comes in. Remember we were talking about investigating things, really digging into knowledge and trying to understand what's going on in the world.
No more just like mindlessly scrolling here, like you got to actually take it in.
Exactly. It's about choosing to pay attention to the information we're taking in and actually looking for knowledge that helps us grow.
And then we got to actually put it into action. That's the rectifying the heart part, where we check in with ourselves and make sure our actions are lining up with our values.
Exactly. And that's where being sincere is so important. It's not enough to just know what the right thing is. We have to want to do it for real. And then, of course, we actually have to do it.
No more do as I say, not as I do. We have to walk the walk, even if nobody's watching.
100%. And that's how we start to really live that illustrious virtue that Confucius was talking about. And as we build that inner goodness, it naturally flows outward to our families, our communities, the whole world, eventually.
It's wild how those small acts of kindness, they can have such a ripple effect. You never know who might be watching, who you might inspire.
That's so true. And I think that's a really hopeful way to look at things, especially with everything going on in the world these days, It can feel overwhelming sometimes. But The Great Learning reminds us that we've all got the power to make a positive impact. And it starts with each of us individually.
It's about getting that we're all connected and that what we do matters, even if it feels small. Our actions can build a kinder, more just world.
Yes, exactly. And that's something worth thinking about, Really sit with that.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up our deep dive into Confucius's The Great Learning, I gotta say, I'm feeling challenged, but also really inspired. It's a good reminder that growing as a person, it's not just about us. It's about being part of something much bigger.
I love that. I think you really got it. That's the heart of what The Great Learning is all about. It's a message that goes beyond time. It's about striving to be our best selves so we can create a better world together.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So, to everyone listening, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it's got you thinking about your own potential for growth and how your actions, big or small, can really create positive change. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deeper into the knowledge that shapes our lives.